Hello everybody, welcome to the Bean Bird 2 channel where we talk about testimonies and the goodness of God. Recently I got a question from Julia and I wanted to answer it here in a video because there was a lot to say and I thought there might be some more of you that have the same question. So Julia asked, with the current state of the world, do you think we could be raptured soon? Has the Lord given you and your family further dreams of what's coming? Interested to know your thoughts. All the best to you and your family. Thank you for your question. The quick answer is yes, I do think that the rapture is coming. Yes, the Lord has shown me and my family more things, and I would love to share them with you now. Before I get into that, I just want to say that I want to kind of keep this more of a casual video. I'm trying to imagine if you were here in my family room and we were having a conversation, how would I answer this question? And this is what I would say. First, I would say anytime we're talking about dreams and visions, we always have to keep in mind that sometimes the Lord shows me things or my family things and they're figurative, there's symbolism, and other times it can be very literal and very plain and clear. So always we need to pray and take it to the Lord to make sure that we're interpreting things correctly. Sometimes the Lord will show us something and it will be like a warning, and prayer can change the outcome of the thing that we're warned about. So just because we see something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take place exactly the way that we saw it. And I definitely want to put that disclaimer on there. Anything that anybody shares with you related to prophecy, you should take it to the Lord and ask Him and see the way that He wants to speak to you on that topic. But the first I want to mention 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's verse 8 through 13 if you want to look up the whole thing. But it says in this part of scripture that we know in part and we prophesy in part. The day will come when we know in full, but right now we see in part. And in verse 12 it says, "For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I will know fully, just as I also have been fully known." So we see dimly, we see in part, and when the body comes together and we share various pieces that the Lord has shown us, sometimes we can get a clearer picture of what God is saying. Yes, I do believe that we are in the end time season, and I do believe that the rapture is imminent. But there's a few things that have happened in my life recently that kind of speak to this topic, which is what I want to share now. Recently, I lost a dear friend of mine who had battled cancer for several years, and he passed away last week. It was one of those situations where it was both expected because he had terminal cancer, but it was also a surprise because we were praying very fervently for his healing. Now we know that the Lord is sovereign and He does His will, and we partner with Him in prayer. But ultimately, the Lord is the one who knows all things. He knows when a fruit is ripe, when to take that fruit. He's not going to allow that fruit to be overripe, and He's not going to pluck it when it's not yet ripened. So the Lord knows the right time to take us home. And so it's important that we don't question that part of His sovereignty, that we trust in Him and His timing and His goodness. So what I wanted to share with you is that I was very invested into praying for my friend and healing. We prayed for many months, and along the way, I felt like I kept getting confirmations to continue to pray for his healing. I would get timely verses, and there were other things that happened that made me really believe that this was the Lord's will for me to continue to pray. One of the verses that I got one day was Matthew 17, where it says, "If you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you." That's Matthew 17:20. And then in the same day, I got the verse Matthew 21:21. "So Jesus answered and said to them, 'Assuredly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but also, if you say to this mountain, 'Be removed and be cast into the sea,' it will be done. Whatever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." And then also in Mark 11:22, so Jesus answered and said to them, "Have faith in God, for assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you will receive them and you will have them." And so I was believing and praying for his healing with this type of faith, and I thought, I'm going to pray with full belief in the Spirit. I'm not going to, think about what I see with my eyes in the physical, but I'm going to pray and believe in faith. So when I received the phone call that he had passed away, I was both surprised, yet also not surprised, because I could see that he was, in poor health. And of course, he had, continued to walk out that journey of his sickness. And the Lord doesn't waste anything. So everything that he went through, the Lord used for growing, his faith and preparing him for his next season that was for him. So the Lord knows, and the Lord, I just want to say that we trust in him, whatever the outcome. So in my surprise, I took it to the Lord and I was asking him, Lord, how did I get this wrong? I really felt like you were encouraging me to keep praying for him, and yet I'm surprised that you took him home. And I just felt like he spoke into my spirit so clearly. That's how it will be when I come. My people will be both shocked and surprised, and yet they will say, we saw the evidence was all around us the whole time. And when that hit my spirit, it just really was a profound moment for me. It just really, really struck me. And I thought about all the times in my mind where I've kind of thought, oh, the Lord won't come until after this thing is finished. Maybe a church will start a project or have a missionary trip, and I'll think, well, the rapture won't happen until after that mission trip is complete, or after this building project is done, or because the Lord keeps giving us work to do. And in my mind, I keep thinking, okay, the Lord gave us this work to do, so probably the rapture will happen after that's done. But when he spoke this message into my spirit about that's how it will be when I come, people will be both shocked and yet say they saw the evidence the whole time, is that the Lord will, I think when we're raptured, I believe it will be one of those things where we will be interrupted in our work, and that we will be working right up until the point that he calls us. And that means that we may be in the middle of a project or in the middle of a missionary trip. And what we're supposed to be doing is be caught working when the master comes. And that's the posture that we're supposed to have, is to be continuing to work when he comes. And that many people, we can hope and pray that we will be in the middle of the project when he comes. And it doesn't necessarily mean that these things have to be completed first. Also, I had a dream, and this dream was very symbolic, which is why I wasn't sure if I was going to share it or not. But I'm going to share it just with the disclaimer that this is a dream. It's symbolic. I'm not sure exactly what its meaning is, but I am confident that the overall meaning is that the Lord is coming soon. I was on a campground, and it was a beautiful campground. There were trees. It was just very nature like, and I was at this campground teaching a bunch of, it was like a girl camp. It was a Christian girl camp. There was worship, and I remember that I was there with another person from my church, and we were leading worship and teaching the girls. And something that was notable was that in the front of the campground was a lake, and behind the campground was an ocean. And there was a point where I had said that I wanted to go out into the boat into the lake, which was in front of the campground. And I went into the lake with this boat. It was almost like a fishing boat with a little motor, a very simple boat. And as soon as I put the boat into the lake, it got swept out into the lake and I had no power to my boat. The motor wasn't working, and I got swept out to the sea, and I began to be like, oh my goodness, I've lost control of this situation. I have no power. And immediately as I, spoke those words or had that revelation, the boat ended up being supernaturally, brought back to land immediately. It was just like brought back to land. And I was aware that there was an ocean behind the campground, and I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. Then the scene changed, and I became aware that I was dreaming. It was like a lucid type dream where I had this awareness. I remember telling myself, oh my goodness, I'm dreaming. Now is my time to ask God a question. So I asked the Lord, what would you like to show me? And I saw that I was in a mall, and the mall had moral decline, just evident all around as I looked around. It was a very worldly place. And I felt like there was this warning of like, don't try to fit in, don't try to impress people, don't try to impress the wrong people. And then the scene shifted to like the lake, where I saw naval ships traveling in a line, single file. And they were like smaller naval ships. I'll put a picture of what they looked like. And then the next picture I saw was a cityscape. It was high-rise buildings. And I looked up into the sky and I saw a red full moon. And then I woke up. So when I was thinking about the dream, I thought, was that a significant dream? Was that the Lord? Was that my own imagination? And I started thinking about the things that I saw in the dream. And I mentioned it in the campground that I was with a woman from my church. And so I asked her when I went to church in real life, I went to church and I said, hey, I had a dream that you and I were teaching girls at a girls' camp at this like nature grounds. And she said, oh, that's so funny that you say that, because sometimes I joke with my husband that someday I'd like to do that. And I thought, that's interesting. What are the odds, So then I started thinking about the other aspects of the dream, and the boat and the ocean and the lake, and I felt like that meant something. Now, I could be wrong on my interpretation on this, but I'm just going to share the way that I took it. I felt like the ocean and back represented the past, like the vastness of it, and that the lake in front represented the future. And I think what it meant when I went into the boat, into the lake, and it had no power, is sometimes I get anxious thinking about the future, thinking about the what ifs. And when we try to put our mind into the worries of the future, we're being anxious for the future, which the Lord tells us not to. It tells us to be anxious for nothing, that we're to put all of our hope and trust into the Lord and to rest and trust in Him. But when my mind starts racing and I jump mentally into worrying about the future, there's no power there. But when I call out to the Lord or repent, the Lord brings me back into the present, which I think represents the campground. I think the campground represents, doing the Lord's work. In that campground, I was teaching. We were doing worship. It was a pleasant place. It was a safe place. It was. I think that present is almost like being under the Lord's wings and just doing the work that He has us to do. And when I saw the picture of the mall with the moral decline, and I saw, the warning not to try to fit in, not to try to impress the wrong people, and I saw the naval ships in the lake and the blood moon, I think all those things just point to the season that we're in. We are seeing the moral decline. We are hearing, about wars and rumors of wars and little skirmishes between the countries. And then I don't really fully understand why we keep seeing the blood red moon in the sky. I know that there are blood moons, and that I do believe they are significant. I do believe that the Lord put these things into the sky, for times and seasons, for us to know that He's near. all these things just point to the imminence of the season that we're in, that I do believe he can come at any time. I do believe that we should be working right up until the time that he comes. And I do believe that when he comes, we will both be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was going to be today. But at the same time, we'll also look at the world and say, of course, I mean, look at all the signs. They were all around us. We should have known the Lord was coming very soon. So I hope that answers everybody's question. And, the Lord is preparing us for this season. We're seeing him pour out his spirit, and we're seeing more people, dream dreams, and we need to continue to pray for healing. But we always have to remember too that the sovereignty of God, right? We want the Lord's will. We don't know and understand everything, and our ways are not his ways. And we have to trust that he is good and that he works all things for the good of those who love him, and that he's doing that good work in your life and in my life. And even if we don't understand the situation, the Lord knows what to show us and what to give us to get the outcome that he wants out of us, which is the growing and the refining of our faith. We are walking on a path with the Lord, and we can trust him that he's leading us on this path, and that we're not going to be misled. Even if we don't understand something, even if we misinterpret something, the Lord knows how to get us where he's taking us. And so we can just trust in him and his leadership. And he's a good father. So thanks for staying with me here today. I hope that this was beneficial, and I will see you all next time.